I'm Ashley Kehr. Welcome to Be a Better Landlord. Today, I'm going to be talking about how I handled my very first eviction. And let me tell you, I did not handle it well. So, I actually started off working for an investor before I even bought my first property. And with this investor, I probably was a property manager for him for about a year before the first eviction came up. I really had no property management experience. I was an accountant before I started working for this investor. So when it was time to do this eviction, I really had no idea what to do. And he also had no idea what to do. So I wanted to hire an attorney, but he was like, no, you can do this. My brother, he has a property and his property manager goes ahead and does the eviction. You can figure it out. Well, I'm thankful he had confidence in me, but it did not pan out well. So those evictions were scheduled back to back to each other. And for the first one, the judge ripped me apart. I was holding back tears. My eyes were starting to weld. I did the timelines wrong. So in New York State, you have to kind of, serve the person within so many dates, but it has to be so many dates before the court. You have to file a notice to them first, giving them so many days to pay. So there's a whole process that takes place. And I just did not follow that correctly. And I messed up some of the dates. So the judge had to dismiss the case. And basically, I would have to start the process all over again. So after the first person went, the judge was at least sympathetic enough to say, okay, when the next person comes in, I'm just dismissing the case and I'm not going to say why. I am just going to dismiss it to save you the embarrassment. So I was very thankful for that at that point in time. This was a really big lesson for me. And after that, we decided to always hire an attorney to do the process. It ends up being around $1,200 for us to go through a full eviction. Most people end up leaving, or, maybe they end up paying before the whole process actually goes through. So, very rarely are we actually going through a full eviction where we have to have the marshals come and change the locks and get the people out. For my first property, and this was my first duplex that I purchased with a partner, the eviction process went smoother because I had an attorney. But what I did wrong with this person was I did not screen them correctly. And I could have prevented this whole eviction by doing proper screening. And the reason I didn't screen them was because they were an employee of my partner. The lesson that I learned was no matter if they're a family member, no matter if they're a friend of a friend, and no matter if they're an employee, a coworker, you should always take the steps to do proper screening. And right now, I use TurboTenant to go through my whole screening process from start to finish. I'm running a credit check, I'm running a background check, I'm doing income verification, none of which I did with this person because they were an employee and we just knew what their paycheck was and thought, "Oh, well, we know that they can afford it," but really they couldn't afford it because we didn't even look at, their credit report to see what other debt, what other monthly payments they had out of there. So they paid for about a year and then we went through the eviction and they left so much stuff behind. The apartment was destroyed. We probably spent about $5,000 doing renovations and just fixing the property back up, plus getting a dumpster stuff, plus having a guy chuck their furniture out the window into the dumpster. So if I could do it over again, I would always hire an attorney first and have them go through the process. It is well worth it to have somebody go through it and do it right once than having to start over. So in my example, when I had to start over the timeline, and sometimes it can take like 45, even sometimes up to 2 months to actually get that court date once you go through the whole process in New York State. So every state is different. So make sure you know what your state laws are. And some really great resources for that are attending landlord classes. In my area, New York State, the local housing authorities offer really low cost classes for like 20 bucks, and some are virtual, some are in person. And then you can also find free ones too. But especially Section 8 providers, like in Buffalo, New York, it's Belmont. They offer a lot of those classes, and then, like, Home NY is another one that does for landlords in New York. So if you just search housing organization in whatever market you're in, if they don't have anything on their website, you should be able to call and they should be able to direct you. Also, if you visit your local town hall, there's usually like pamphlets and little booklets that they have, and they usually have one for landlords and one for tenants, and go over what the basics of the tenant landlord laws are in that area too. So I always find those really, really helpful. So, what you should be taking away from this story and this video is don't skip out on having processes. So, for the eviction process, anytime somebody is late paying their rent, after a certain amount of time, we call them, we send them notices, figure out what's going on, and then we're sending our attorney their lease agreement, their tenant ledger, and then also the amount of the unpaid rent, the notice that went to them already regarding that amount. And then we're letting the attorney take it from start to finish. So find a local attorney that is experienced in doing evictions, knows the process, and make sure you actually understand what that process is with them. The second thing to take away is to not skip out on tenant screening. It has been a very long time since I've actually done an eviction on a tenant that I actually screened and rented to. So I've done an eviction on an inherited tenant, and I've done an eviction on recently a tenant that was put in when I used a property management company 2 years ago. So if you can get your screening process in order, then you're going to reduce the risk of actually having to evict someone. And it's not always a guarantee. Doing tenant screening isn't going to give you 100% success rate of not evicting a tenant, but it will significantly reduce that risk. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today here on Be a Better Landlord. If you guys want to hear more stories like this of lessons I've learned, mistakes I made so that you don't have to make them, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.